You kids want to try your luck?
Look, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, stalking Kate Walker.
Hey!
Are you still on my side?
Are you even on your own side?
I'm gonna let you know a little secret. The Wallises always win.
Your memory's been shaky since the trauma. Don't you think it's possible that you didn't see what you think you saw?
How are you doing today, Jayson?
I'm good. I'm very good. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes, no, and I always like to talk to cinematographers, like people behind the scenes, because I think you guys also you are the ones that make the real magic on the series, on the movies.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. I think the actor is there too. They are important, but I think most of the hard work come from behind the scenes. I don't know.
Oh, well, it's kind of you to say. No, I think it's very much a team effort. It's very much. I think everybody, for anything to be successful, I think everybody really has to make every individual person makes a really important contribution. So I think every project. One of the things I really love about what I do is that everything is very much a collaborative effort, and nothing that I work on or we do can you do by yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about this new project that is already aired at Freeform, Cruel Summer. Mm-hmm. What attracted you to the project when you like how did you come on board?
It was something that it's actually a good question. As I remember, because this is actually. So I'd actually heard about the project back at the very beginning of 2020. They shot the pilot. I believe they shot the pilot at the end of 2019. I heard about the project at the beginning of 2020. It was something that sounded very interesting to me. My agency helped set up an interview for it. Interview went great, and I was hired to shoot the series at the beginning of 2020. And then I was hired literally a day or two before the COVID pandemic kind of shut down the whole industry. And so then it was kind of a waiting game of waiting for COVID protocols to get put into place and figure out a way that we could all go back to work safely. So that's initially how I heard about the project. It was something that I'd read about. It sounded very interesting. I was able to speak with my agency, and I knew some people involved in the production. I was really drawn initially to it. The concept sounded very interesting. Just on paper, it sounded very interesting. And then I was able to view the pilot. And I thought the pilot was directed by Max Winkler, and the work that he and his original cinematographer did, I thought was really wonderful. And I thought there was not only was it a great story concept, there's also some really wonderful visual things and technical ways they were doing the project I thought were really interesting. And actually, I got to work with Max because we did a fair amount of reshoots on the pilot, script changes and some casting changes. So I was able to work with Max on the pilot reshoots as well. But I was really drawn to the material and also the way the material was being done. I'd also say the other big draw was when I did the interview, when I interviewed for the show, the people involved were also just all really great. Our producers, our producing director, our showrunner, everybody was just really, really wonderful. And you just got a really good sense, talking to everybody, got a really good sense that everybody was really good people and really passionate and very smart. And I mean, that's the best you can hope for, something that sounds like good material with great people.
No, I think it's great. And also, like, I want to ask you the approach that the conversations that you have with the creators, with the directors, to bring the look and feel of 90s, because I know the series is like 3 different years, but you can see they are very well defined on colors. Like one is very bright, the other one is like in between, the other one is like it has a cold look. How was that conversations?
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to know that it worked. I mean, that was one of the I think it's probably one of the very first conversations we had was we knew that the show was going to and I think as the series goes along, the cross-cutting becomes even more, we do a lot more cross-cutting. I think the episode that actually aired last night, episode 105, was, there's a lot of stuff where you're cross-cutting between not just 3 periods, but you're also cross-cutting between 3 periods and different storylines. So you have, the show is in some ways kind of like there's Jeanette's storyline, and then there's Kate's storyline. So you kind of have 2 different main stories going that keep crossing back and forth with each other, and you have 3 periods. And so the episode that aired last night is a good example of, it was the first episode where the characters really kind of met and those storylines started crossing back and forth with each other. So that episode in particular was really tricky because it had sort of 6 different timelines kind of all crossing with each other, and we're cutting back and forth. So early on, a lot of the early discussions were, how do we create a visual language that is distinct enough that we can easily jump back and forth between scenes without the audience being confused, without us having to put up, a Chiron on the screen saying, this is 93, this is 95, this is 94, because we have to do that every single edit. It's going to get that's going to be more confusing and more jarring and just annoying. The looks we kind of settled on were a result of a lot of different conversations. Before I was even on the ground, we shot the show in Dallas. Before I even arrived in Dallas, there were early conversations between me and our producing director, Bill Purple. Those conversations also involved Michelle Purple, our producer, T, our showrunner. So there were a lot of early discussions of, here's some broad ideas. We just kind of started throwing ideas back and forth, and things like that I find always come about from, in some cases, you start talking about the things that it isn't. So in case of like 1995, I was like, look, 1995, just narratively, is when things are at their worst. Jeanette is the most hated person in America. Kate has completely evolved. So like some of it just kind of came about from, 1995 is where some of the heaviest drama happens. So it shouldn't be bright and happy and cheerful. Okay, so if 95 is going to be kind of the darkest point thematically, so it should maybe be the darkest thing visually. So then we started kind of working back and going, and for me, I kind of use the analogy of these 3 time periods. We're watching people evolve from like innocent children to troubled adults. So in 1993, they're very innocent. They're still kids. They play hide and seek, and they ride around their bicycles, and they hang out at the mall. Like, they're still children, and there's a certain kind of innocence. 1994 is when that innocence starts to fade away and they start to grow up. And then 1995 is, for me, I was looking at it as 1995 is they're adults. They've been exposed to the real world. Being an adult can be very hard and very painful. So I broke it out that way. And then we just started kicking on ideas specifically. We did some camera tests during prep. And the sort of process of elimination, we had some broad strokes and then started chipping away, saying, well, it's not that, it's not that. So it's none of these things. And what's left is kind of what we're going to focus on. The other cinematographer, I shot of the 10 episodes, the pilot was shot by somebody else. I did reshoots for the pilot. I did 5 of the episodes. Alan Westbrook was the rotating cinematographer. And Alan and I got along from the very first time he and I spoke. So we also, I had a lot of initial ideas I've spoken to Bill about, and then Alan and I started talking about some more ideas, refining them. We both took them back to Bill. So it just kind of became a collaboration of everybody saying, yes, we like that. Maybe no, it's not that. And then to a certain extent, even after the first episode, some of that still evolved. We shot the first episode, and a lot of times you have things that work on paper or work in your mind, they work in theory.
Yeah, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, or it works, but you look at it and go, it's not bad, but it could be better. So I think some of the stuff we did in the very first episode that we shot for the series, which was 102, I think there's a little bit of an evolution throughout the series from some of the things we did visually there, because we were trying things and going, all right, it's close, but it would be better if we did this. So episode 103 and 104 were kind of us evolving the ideas we had from 102. But yeah, the big motivator from everything was really, how do we create, at the end of the day, it was really all about, everything was driven by, how do we create 3 distinct looks so that the audience always knows where they are timeline wise.
Yeah.
But also, how do we create this look so that each look obviously has a certain, quote unquote style to it, but we didn't want to go too over the top and have visual languages that were, that felt overly stylized. So it's trying to find a balance of finding a visual language that works to support the show and help the audience be not confused and stay grounded without being overly stylized and like kind of banging the audience over the head with it.
Yeah, what does amaze me, like, because you can see the consistency in all the episodes, and you have different directors, you have different cinematographers. I think it's amazing the way that that works. I know sometimes you can try to fix on the editing room, but I think pretty much everything starts like on set. So it's amazing how the consistent is. Like, how do you guys do that?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, again, that's made a lot easier when you have just really good collaborators. Every time we had directors come in from the very beginning, it was a lot of very clear conversations between again, Bill Purple and Michelle, Michelle Purple, like a lot of conversations about this is what the show is, this is what the show isn't. And then, working with directors, both Alan and I think there was a lot of discussions, when new directors would come in, it'd be a lot of discussions of, look, this is, we kind of had a visual Bible, if you will. It was a document that we put together that talked about, lighting, blocking, composition, camera movement. We kind of had all these different visual rules so that before a director even arrived, we could email them this, 15-page document and say, so they kind of came in understanding like, hey, these are sort of the language of our show. So that kind of got a lot of the groundwork set for us. So the very first day of prep with a new director, they could come in saying, okay, so I know that, in 1993, you can do a lot more camera movement. There's handheld and there's Steadicam. Whereas like 1995, we didn't use Steadicam or we didn't do any handheld. We had very more locked off camera. So just them coming in and having access to that document. And we would, again, the first couple of episodes, Alan and I would revisit it and update it and change things so that as the season went along and new directors would come, we could send this document. And it was just kind of a nice introduction to how we were doing the show. And then again, it was just, we had really great directors too. Like every director that came in was very collaborative. So we could sit down and say, what is it that you want to do as a director? And what is it that we want to do as the cinematographers or as the producers, as the production designer? And there was never any really conflict on set, or during prep. It was always like, great, we're all kind of on the same page about how do we do the best thing possible. And actually, if anything, that was maybe the best part of this whole experience was everybody would kind of bring an idea to the table, and then it would be, okay, well, that's a great idea, but what if we did this to make it better? And then everybody would go, oh, that is a better idea. Well, how about we did this? So it was always everybody trying to take an idea and evolve it and keep making it better and better, up until it's like, all right, we have to start shooting. But it was always very much a collaborative effort. So it was, I think part of that consistency comes from everybody consistently being on the same page and having the same goal, which was, we've got really good scripts, we've got really good actors. How do we respect this material and not screw it up and just do it right? Yeah.
No, I think it's great. Like in all these, I always say that it takes a village to do a movie, to do a series, to raise a kid.
Yeah,
takes a village. So I think it's amazing. Like everything that you guys do over there. Like, let's talk a little bit about the industry. Like you've been in the industry for quite some time, and you passed through a lot of transitions and from filmy to digital. How do you feel about these, like all these changings right now, that even though you're doing the series is a TV show, but we also be streaming, and how do you feel about these changings on the industry?
Yeah, I these days, that's a very big question. I mean, in general, I'd say, everything evolves, everything changes, progress is inevitable. And that's, I think, a good thing. I think, like when digital started, I came out of film school around the time when like the first real HD camera started becoming available, around the time that, you know, the new, like the Star Wars prequels were starting to come out, and people were starting to look and go, oh, like HD is starting to become a thing. That's when I was leaving. I was making the transition out of film school as HD was first being kind of introduced. So I was at a really interesting point in my career that I learned on film, but then as I was still starting my career, the whole industry was starting to make a transition from film into digital. So I feel very fortunate that I got a start on film and then got to be a part of the kind of the whole industry transitioning to that, which I think is a great thing. You know, I mean, look, film is great. I still shoot film sometimes, not as much these days anymore because, you know, digital is much more readily available, in a lot of ways more affordable. But I still shoot film. I shoot predominantly digital these days, which I think is a good thing, because I think although there are some complaints you can make about digital, I for one am a very big fan of digital, largely because it enables me to take some more risks that maybe, you know, film would have been. You know, I think part of being creative is you always take risks. I think digital lets me take more risks and I can be more calculated about it. But the biggest benefit to digital, and I've said this for a while, is, you know, with film, you know, you're standing on set talking to a director, to a production designer, and you're, you know, looking at a monitor and going, all right, this isn't what it's going to really look like. So you're trying to have kind of vague conversations. Whereas, you know, a director might say, I want this very dark. So I can say, oh no, trust me, it'll be dark. And I might be doing what I think is dark, but that director might think, oh no, I want it a lot darker. Or, oh no, I wanted it dark, but that's not my version of dark. With digital, it's great. I can bring a director over and go, you know, let's talk about this. Is this what you had in mind? Is this dark enough for you? Is it too dark? You know, I can bring a production designer over and we can talk about, you know, we can look at the set. And so we can have rather than having conversations of interpretation, we can have very specific conversations and point and go, is this working? Does this not work? Or if there's an issue, I can point, you know, we can look at a monitor and say, this is what it's going to look like. I think this is problematic. Let's talk about how we solve it. That's invaluable. Like, that's such a great tool. So I'm a big fan of digital. In terms of the industry changing, that's always going to happen. You know, right now, obviously, there's a lot more production being done in the television world, which I, for one, really enjoy television. You know, one thing I continue to say is the thing I like about television is it's a little bit like theater. You know, in theater, you know, you could have a show on a Wednesday night, and maybe it's not great, but whatever caused it not to be great, you can learn from that and then apply it to the next show you do on Thursday night and make it better. TV is the same way. You know, for example, you know, there was a set on Cruel Summer. The very first time we shot on it, you know, the very first day, we had never shot on that set. So we lit it and it worked. But I remember when we were shooting it, I was like, all right, it's working, but it could be better. And when we were done shooting, I was able to review dailies and watch it and go, oh, you know what we should have done? I should have done this. We should have done this. And so in a feature, that might have been the only time we shot on that set. Whereas with TV, I can go, oh, well, in 3 days, we have another scene on that same set. So 3 days later, I was able to take the thing that I learned from Monday, you know, and
apply to
exactly. So like, I think, you know, with TV, you sort of get a chance to keep trying things over and over again, because you have the nature of TV is you have certain sets you keep revisiting, and you have some of the same core characters. You know, there are new characters that come in and out, but there are certain consistent things in a television series that you're able to keep kind of refining. So I think it's inevitable when you're doing TV. I think it's inevitable, especially at first season, like the way the first episode looks and the way you'll do things in the last episode. It's inevitable. There's an evolution there because you keep learning things and applying them. That's something that I really, really love about television, is that you have an opportunity to experiment and try something. And if it doesn't work quite the way you wanted, you have a chance to learn why and apply it later on. The downside of television, it's not necessarily a downside, but with television, there's obviously, you know, when a director comes in, the director obviously has a lot of input, but there's a lot of, you know, it's the director's input, it's the input of the producers, it's the input of the showrunner, it's the input of the studio's involved. There's a lot of other people involved in every kind of creative decision, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Because I think better ideas come out of collaboration. The thing I enjoy about doing like a feature film, for example, because I've done a lot of features, those tend to be more driven by a more singular vision, the director, maybe the director and producer team, but there's a lot more specificity in how you're going to do something. Again, the downside though is, with a feature, you're going to be at that location maybe once. So if you don't get it right, that's it. That's what's in the movie. Whatever you learn about, what I should have done doesn't really matter because you don't get to go back and do it. So there's real advantages and disadvantages. There's advantages to both that I really enjoy, and it's why I feel very fortunate to be able to jump back and forth between, I can do a TV series for a few years and then go do some movies, and then do a TV series and go back and do some movies. Like I enjoy jumping back and forth. And I think that's to kind of go back to your question, because I don't want to be on a tangent, but
that's okay. That's good.
It's. I mean, look, things. I mean, not to get not to kind of wax philosophically here, but like the very nature of life is like change and evolution and progress. Like this industry is going to do the same thing. I don't see that as a bad thing. I think technology. With anything, like new technology can create problems, but I think in general, new technology creates more opportunities than problems it creates. And I think part of our responsibility as filmmakers is, to look and go like, this is just the state of the world. This is how, this industry is evolving. And so rather than fighting against it or complaining about it, evolving with it and going, all right, if this is how things are evolving, how can we evolve with it and continue to do not just good work, but better work, with new technology, with more streaming networks. Like, I think there's also something to be said for TV. Is part of the reason TVs continue to get better is because there's so much TV available that, as creators, as filmmakers, as storytellers, 20 years ago when there were, only a few channels and not a lot of shows, everybody I think tried to do good work, but there were the standards for excellence were maybe a little bit lower. Whereas now, you look at something like, Game of Thrones, you go, okay, that's a TV show. That's something that people can watch. So if you're going to make a TV show, you really have to aspire to do something better, because there's so many different options that if you don't try to do something really amazing, if you don't try to do something that's really great storytelling, if you don't set a very high bar for yourself, the audience just won't turn up because they have so many other options. So I think all those different options, and in a lot of ways, forces all of us to kind of up our game, which I think is great.
I think it's amazing, like with the streaming services, even TV, like the quality of the series, it's so high. And if you don't catch the viewer right away, they're gonna go to find something else, someplace else.
Look,
and I think
I'm guilty of it too. I have Amazon, Hulu, and HBO, and Disney Plus. Like, I have all these things. Being in the industry, I'll watch. I'll turn on a show, and if I'm not really hooked in the first 10 minutes, I'm like, okay, I'm going to turn this off. I'll watch something different. And I know how hard it is to make a TV show, but even then, I'm like, there's so many things that I'm like, okay, there's so many things I'm interested in seeing that, I'll try it out, and if it doesn't hook me, okay, then I'm going to move on to something else, because I literally have a list of TV shows. I'm like, all right, these are all shows that I've heard good things about, or shows that friends and colleagues, are doing that I want to check out. Even I am a creator of these things, and even I, as an audience member, I'm like, yeah, if you don't have me in the first 10, 15 minutes, I'm going to move on and try something different, because I've got a list of 17 different shows that I want to go see.
Yeah, that's why it's so high.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs to be like paying attention to that. Last year I watched Force of Nature, and I spoke with Michael Polish, and he talked.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes, I did. I spoke to him, and then I asked about the cinematographer, and then he talked very highly about you.
Oh,
that's why I just mentioned that. That's really good.
Well, Michael and I have done. I think we've done 3 features together, and then we did like a fashion film years and years ago. We've worked together for I guess 8 or 9 years now. Yeah, he's great. He's kind of an amazing. He's kind of a perfect collaborator for a cinematographer, because he himself he thinks everything is, the visuals are such a priority to him. And you know, I mean, Michael has also been like his own DP for things. Like Michael could be a cinematographer if he wanted to. So it's great to collaborate with somebody that is very visually driven and very much cares about the look of things, and is never interested in, you know, well, let's just get the scene shot. It's, you know, look, we're going to make it as interesting in visual as possible, because otherwise, why are we here? Like Michael's a true lover of cinema, and very collaborative with his cinematographers. So yeah, I don't think it's an accident that some of my best work has come from my working relationship with Michael.
That's great. And for me to wrap it up, I always ask this question for people like that, like for they're very experienced. If you have an advice to give to anyone to want to pursue a career, doesn't need to be in the entertainment industry, it can be anything. If you have an advice to give to the youngest generation.
Oh wow, yeah. It's always so strange for me to feel like I give advice because I still feel like I'm at the beginning of my career. You know, I'd say two things. There's a practical thing, and then there's maybe a less practical thing. Practically, if you're coming in the industry, learn to keep your overhead low and save your money. I think the pandemic showed everybody that in a very big way. Like, you know, it's an industry of freelance. So you'll have periods where you work a lot, and then you'll have periods where you don't work. You know, and the reason you don't work are all over the map. So keep your overhead low and save your money. That's the practical advice. The less practical advice is, I mean, look, I got my start, you know, when I started, it was before digital. It was, you know, there weren't all, you know, there's hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of websites with information available. There's so much information and resources and tools that are available either for free or virtually no money, that, you know, when I started 20 years ago, I simply didn't have. And somehow, you know, I also have a career, and when I started off, I didn't know anybody in this industry. So I think if I'm able to do it, anybody is able to do it. But I think more than anything, what has served me really well is, you know, finding something that you are really passionate about, whether it's in this industry or not, but just in general, especially in this industry, but finding something you're really passionate about, finding why you're passionate about it, remembering that, and fostering that. Because I think, you know, look, it's a tough industry. It takes a very long time to break in. It's got a lot of ups and downs. For me, you know, even when I have like down moments, I actively remind myself of like why I got into this and what I'm passionate about and what it is that I really enjoy doing. Because I think that's important to be aware of and keep in mind, to help you kind of weather the down times. But yeah, I think if this is something you want to do, you're going to have to really work hard at it. And it takes a lot of sacrifice and a lot of concentration, a lot of effort, but it's very achievable. And, you know, I have the best job in the world. You know, like I get paid to hang out with a lot of very creative people and do creative things that other people get to enjoy. Like that's the best job in the world.
And do what you love. So
yeah, I get producers pay me to, you know, I hope no producers watch this. Like producers pay me to do the thing that I would probably do for free anyways. Like this is, you know, I get paid to do my hobby. Like how great is that? Like I never, you know, the worst day on set is still like, oh, but this is still a thing I love to do. So I get paid to do my hobby. Like that you can't ask for a better life than that, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. Jayson, I just want to thank you so much for your time. I like the conversation. I think, well, thank you so much and a lot of success.
Thank you.
And I cannot wait for your next project.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you asking me to be on here, and have a very good afternoon. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you like this video, don't forget to comment, to like, and subscribe to our channel right here.